The Orange County Forum is a nonprofit organization. Your contributions are tax deductible.
It is my pleasure to introduce the Lieutenant Governor of the State of California and candidate for Governor, Gavin Newsom.
Thanks, Henry. Thank you. It's fun to compare and get. By the way, we were talking about how difficult it was to have a meeting at the CSU Board of Trustees. We probably spent 2 years where we didn't have one meeting that wasn't disrupted and shut down because of conversations around tuition increases and all the consternation around budget cuts, et cetera. But anyway, Henry, fun to go back, and grateful again for your persistence and getting me down here. And thank you to all of you for the opportunity to share a little bit of time. And good to see a number of you again back at this forum. A couple of things just to flesh out a little bit of my background, and I appreciate Henry giving a little bit of my resume. And I did have the privilege of growing up in the Bay Area in San Francisco. 18-year-old mom who became a single mom at 20 years old, and was raised 2 young kids. She came from not a tough background, but she struggled, and she passed away about 15 years ago. And gave me all the grit and perseverance any human being could ever need or want. An extraordinary example. And I know, like all of you, the power of parenting, the power of emulation, the power of example. I literally am here because of that. And we were just referencing a little bit of my mom, because she was a Chico State graduate, dropout after her first year, but a good product, at least partial product of the CSU system. I also have the privilege of having a father who's still with us. He's 84 years old now, living with my sister part-time and with my family part-time. And it's an interesting bookmark that is now the sort of punctuation point of our time. You're taking the kids to school, and you're taking your dad or your parents to the doctor. He's got 24/7 care, and he's in diapers and a wheelchair. I'm not saying this to lament. I'm not saying this to complain. I'm just making a point that these issues have a different kind of texture now in my life, a different kind of internalization as it relates to what's happening in this state. And it's a way of making the following point. It's an introduction of sorts of my thinking now, not just out on the campaign trail. And I've been out for almost a year and a half. We've been doing town halls all up and down the state. Just finished Stockton, Modesto. We were in Placer County. We were in San Bernardino, Fresno a week ago doing town halls, helping inform me. But also, again, what's informed in terms of our personal narrative, our personal history. And that is, there are 3 areas that I think are going to define the fate and future of this state, that are going to be disproportionately the areas of focus, and I would argue not just in this state, but I would argue more broadly in this country. The first area, and I categorize these loosely, and all of this is for fodder for a conversation, because I'm looking forward to what you have on your mind in a moment. The number 1 is the issue of debt and demographics. Number 2, the issue of energy and climate change. And number 3, perhaps the most, I think, challenging issue of our time, and that's the detonation of information technology and globalization. Those are the 3 areas that I would categorize are disproportionately going to be the areas of focus, consternation, stress, and struggle for elected officials, the local, state, and federal level. The issue of debt and demographics shouldn't surprise anybody. It's interesting, back to the CSU, we were just finishing up, as you know, the budget in the state. And it was interesting to look, when you look at that budget, take a look at some of the issues of debt, some of the issues related to our entitlement programs. And as a Democrat, these aren't easy issues, and to have an honest conversation around these issues. But it was an interesting proof point. The CSUs and the UCs 7 years ago received $5.5 billion of general fund money, about the same amount, within a few $100 million, same amount that we were paying from our general fund to retirement costs. It's interesting, in this budget this year, 7 years later, the CSU budget went from $5.5 billion, CSU and UC, to $7 billion. It was about a 27% increase. Retirement costs went from about $6 billion to $11 billion, an 83% increase. 27% increase in the CSU, UC, 83% increase in retirement costs. And with respect, you ain't seen nothing yet. The CalPERS, CalSTRS costs are estimated to go from $6 billion in CalPERS to $9.2 billion in the next 6 years, about an equivalent percentage increase at STRS. And I'm not saying this, I'm a labor guy, but I also, graduated from a university and I took a few math courses. It's an addition issue. And it's compounded by a demographic dividend that no longer exists in this state and in this country. I don't know if you saw the new numbers that came out as it relates to the population growth in this state. We got this silver tsunami. It's a wonderful thing. And again, it goes to my point about my father. I get it. And my children, I get it. But 0 to 4 in the next 10 years, young folks, we're expecting a population decrease of roughly 4%, just over 3.5%. 0 to 4. 65 and over, close to a 78% increase in our population, 65 plus. It's estimated 4 million people, 65 and over, by 2030 living in the state of California. In the vernacular of those that are here, that a little bit of economic background, that dependency ratio is a little bit out of whack. That demographic dividend that helped build the middle class in this country and really sustain the California dream here in this state, it's waning, it's changing. The issue of debt and demographics are profoundly important, and you can't have that conversation without having a healthcare conversation. And you can't have a conversation about the budget unless you're having a healthcare conversation, because the budget is a healthcare budget. That UC Board of Regents meeting we had last year where we increased tuition, that was a healthcare tuition increase. It was, by the way, only $88 million. I just want to remind you of the contributions on retirement and how that's devouring this discretionary general fund. Good luck avoiding those tough conversations in the next few years. I'm going to lay out challenges. I don't mean to be pessimistic or bring you down. You're watching CNN. You got plenty of that 24/7. Because I do want to talk about solutions. And all these things are opportunities. And I want to mark that in your consciousness in the beginning of my remarks so we can end on a more positive note. So the issues, demographics, issues of debt need to be tackled. And if Democrats aren't talking about it and they're running for office, then they're not being sincere about their job description or the work that they have in front of them. Number two, the issue of energy and climate change. Now that makes sense to anyone in California, and it should make sense. Every single day, it seems, we're signing another MOU, we're signing another piece of legislation, an executive order, to significantly, radically change our greenhouse gas emissions and change the way we produce and consume energy. It's just amazing. I mean, the governor's out there, and I give him credit. I'm passionate about these issues. He's, 5 days after Trump pulls out of the Paris Accords, the governor pulls out of his driveway and flies to Beijing, and here he is, a head of a state, not head of state, and he's at the Great Hall of People, and he's signing an MOU with President Xi, one of 176 signatures now we have around the rest of the world, demonstrably showing international leadership, not just state leadership. But as you know, this state has significantly advanced its low-carbon green growth, and the next governor actually has to do the work. I love all these press conferences and backslapping, but we got to get in the how business. There's been, with all due respect, the cap and trade program, it's been small ball the first phase of implementation relative to what's coming next. You want to roll back your greenhouse gas emissions 40% below 1990 levels by 2030, that's the goal. That's a heady project. You want to increase your renewable portfolio to 50+% by 2030, that's a heady project. You want to double your energy efficiency programs, you want to get 1.5 million electric vehicles out on the streets by 2025, that's serious stuff. The next governor actually has to deliver on all those things, and of course deliver on the ultimate promise, and that's the next iteration of the cap and trade program, which we know, as you all know, was just extended. You may not believe in climate change, you may believe in it, but you certainly recognize energy consumption in this state is profoundly significant, particularly in a state that's growing by 350,000+ every single year, and those energy constraints are going to be profound and significant just on their own. And by the way, this is a water conversation. The wets are getting wetter, dries are getting drier, hots are getting hotter. You can call it climate change, global warming, but something ain't right in the vernacular of Texas. And we've got to recognize that we've got a system that was designed for a world that no longer exists. And we've got to modernize the 21st century water system. We can talk more about some strategies and ideas around that. But the third one is the issue of our time, the issue of IT and globalization. We had this raging debate in the presidential about issues of populism associated with globalization. Trump and Sanders on each side of the political aisle, but no one talked about technology, which is rather jaw-dropping and remarkable. My office, Lieutenant Governor's office, is in an incubator with 40 startups in the South of Market in San Francisco. I decided not to move into the State Building. It's literally storage. It's available for $1 a year. We're with 40 startups because I want to lean into this world. I just met a company the other day. A guy said, "Thank you very much for your support of the $15 minimum wage." I said, "Well, our pleasure." And he goes, "Well, let me tell you why." I said, "I didn't know there was a punchline." He goes, "Well, you should come by. We're around the corner from you." Saw me on the streets. It's a company called Momentum Machines. I said, "What do you guys do?" He says, "Well, you got to come down." I said, "Fine." He said, "Around the corner." I walk in, the mission statement of the business, amazing. You can Google this. Our job is not to, he says, make employees more efficient. It's to obviate the need for them. I don't know that I go to work for this guy. But his business model, he says anything gets repeated gets replaced. He's in the fast food business. Perfect hamburgers every 10 seconds, 360 every single hour. He's got a huge investment from, and he didn't tell me which fast food company, but because of that minimum wage increase, they're moving forward to save anywhere from $75,000 to $135,000 per unit. Perfect hamburgers. Large tubes with full heads of lettuce, large tubes with beautiful ripe tomatoes, and you put a little extra into higher quality beef and lower the cost of the product with more precision and perfection. They're going after 3.6 million fast food workers in the United States. They're just starting to roll out partially autonomous fast food units in pilots around the world. It was interesting, my friend Walter Robb, I called him right after that $13.7 billion announcement from Amazon, which, as you know, was consummated officially on Monday. I said, "Walter, first of all, you're doing a fundraiser for me." He's the co-CEO. And I said, "What the hell were they thinking spending $14 billion? I said, "A year ago I was with you and you were a little worried about where Whole Foods was going. You're losing a little market share, some questions about margins, tough business." And he made a couple comments about international expansion, and he said what I expected him to say, and then he sent me an article linked to a little project up in Seattle. And I went, wow. That project called Amazon Go. I don't know if you read about this just a few months ago. You should Google this as well. Amazon Go is a fully autonomous, fully automated, person-less grocery outlet that Amazon is piloting. Walmart, by the way, announced at the bottom of the article, Walmart says, "Oh, we're right behind you." They're going after the 3.4 million cashiers in this country. Number one cost of doing business for everybody in this room, the cost of you and me. And now with autonomous everything, and by the way, that's the CIO of UPS, said, our number one priority is autonomous everything. Is it a surprise that the Teamsters, for the first year ever, negotiated the largest contract of its type in this country, and they negotiated autonomy because UPS just bought a driverless trucking company that has drones attached to it, so those drones can actually go up the steps where a truck cannot. And you think I'm exaggerating, consider the fact that Otto, it's a California-based company, is a trucking company that went 120 miles in Colorado Springs, delivered 46,000 cans of Budweiser last October, completely driverless. They're based up north in the Bay Area. They're going after 3.5 million truck drivers in this country. Interesting, 3.4 cashiers, 3.6 fast food, 3.5. Something big is happening in the plumbing in the world. We're going from something old to something new. We're at a hinge moment. Someone described the other day, I loved it, paralysis contrasted by rebirth. Uber versus the taxi cab industry. And it goes to the anxiety, it goes to the fear that I think undergirds this moment of our political history. And it goes to the issue of wage suppression. In an economy that's relying on 70% of us consuming more, that's a huge issue. And that's why this issue of IT and globalization, 80% IT, 20% globalization, impacting the way we live, work, and play is an issue that politicians must lean into. We must discuss, as uncomfortable as it is, and that is an education issue as much or more than anything else. And with all due respect to those that want to pave over the old cow path and play in the margins on a 2% here or 1% there, you're fooling yourself. This is about transforming, not reforming our educational system. And if we're not leaning in with the kind of scale and scope that's required, then we're in real trouble. 1/3 of the jobs in this state, 1/3, average $13.63. That was a stat that came out last August. 1/3 of full-time workers in this state earning less than $14 an hour. That's not sustainable. And so the days of high-wage, middle-skill jobs that sustain a middle class, they're gone, right? You got to skill up. And I appreciate, as a guy who did universal preschool as mayor, been there, done that, as important as that is, that's table stakes now. It's about lifelong learning. You can't just front-load education. You got to back-load education. And we have some very specific ideas of what I believe needs to be done in order to meet those needs and address this issue at scale. And I'd love to talk about those as well. And by the way, with respect to the CSUs, UCs, as important as they are, the community college system's even more important in addressing that. Our apprentice opportunities, our vocational opportunities, and our ability to, in real time, address the skills issue is an opportunity for this state that I think presents itself. So those are the three areas, and again, in the context of trying to sort of get you thinking about what you may want to discuss this morning, are keeping me animated, keeping me motivated. I can talk about homelessness. You can't be an ex-mayor of San Francisco. I don't care about that. And mental health, we'll talk about that if you have that on your mind. Or foster care. I love to talk about infrastructure and transportation. You want to talk tax reform? I got a lot of ideas on that that go well beyond just split rolls and issues associated with Prop 13. But please, 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 let's keep our eye on the ball, on demographics, on the issues of debt, and the issues of automation, on skilling up a workforce, on reimagining a 21st century education system as we reimagine a 21st century water delivery system as well. This is not a time to be timid, and I will close with this. I'm not running for governor to play in the margins. I have no interest in doing a little bit more or a little bit less. The likelihood the next governor inherits a recession is probably 60 to 70%. The likelihood that this next governor addresses with acuity the issue of automation and the issues associated with displacement are probably 100%. And what we need is leadership, not stewardship. You need someone who's going to help shape that future, someone who's going to step up and step in, someone who's not timid, someone who's not just there with you and waits around for everyone else to join before they step forward, but someone who can shape that future. And I hope when you take a look at the candidates for governor, you look at a little bit of history of where people have been on issues before others have been on issues. People put their careers on the line to help shape things. And people that have at least a track record that understands these intersections. And I'll just close by amplifying one final point that Henry made. The thing that I'm most proud of in my life, besides my 4 kids, is having the privilege of my life, and that was opening a small business right out of college. We have close to 1,000 employees today, 23 businesses all up and down the state. There's only one candidate for governor that's created even one job, let alone 1,000 jobs. That doesn't understand these things intellectually or because he read a focus group or was told that it polls well, but intuitively in the gut. And I'll say this with passion and conviction. Nothing inspires me more, I mean this, than people who put everything on the line. And people are out there in the private sector that are, making a go at it. And if there's anything that defines the greatness of this state is we've got innovation running through our veins. And that entrepreneurial spirit needs to be unleashed in this state. The lack of intentionality on economic development is jaw-dropping to me. And I'm sick and tired. I appreciate references to Texas of, the Rick Perrys of the world, case in our joint, or, others that are coming out here on hunting for jobs. It's time California step up its game. Because at the end of the day, you cannot tax your way to prosperity respectfully, but nor can you cut your way to prosperity. We tried that at the CSU and UC. Trust me, that did not work. You got to grow your way. Focused intention. around private sector economic growth. And I have lots of ideas on that, including an actual plan that I look forward to engaging you and many others over the course of the next few months and hopefully years to come so that we can get this economy moving again and address the issue of income and wealth disparity that is holding us back. That will also define our moment in very, very acute ways. So those are my opening comments, and now I'm interested in what Mike has on his mind. I mean, back to the you want to move the mouse, you got to move the cheese. You got to, again, change incentives for good behavior. Right now, we're incentivized to address our jurisdiction. Our goal is to address, some total of 40 million parts, the state of California, and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions in the state, so we don't necessarily get as animated about pushing those burdens to other states. I think that's fundamentally the answer. It's not a good answer. It's not the one you want, because I sense you want all that back in the state, and I'm not necessarily sure California is equipped, or the businesses themselves are equipped to meet the standards and regulations, particularly the ones we're now just imposing in the next iteration of cap and trade to bring it back. And so, that would be my answer to your question. That said, I'm very proud of our low carbon green growth in this state. I'm not ideological. I'm open argument, interest, and evidence. You got this country, you got less than 50,000 coal jobs in the entire country. We've created over 500,000 green sector jobs in this state. I think it's the ticket to broad-based economic prosperity, radically changing the way you produce and consume energy. I just don't believe the or paradigm. I believe in the and paradigm. I think you can reduce your greenhouse gas emissions and grow your economy, and I think you ain't seen nothing yet in terms of what California is able to do. And by the way, going to have to do, whether you or me or others in this room like it, it's likely that we're going to have a 100% renewable goal by 2045 by the time Governor Brown's term ends. 100% renewable goal. And so that means we got a lot of work to do. Now, there's an opportunity that lies in there. There just is. I mean, no one's better equipped at innovation than this state. And I like audacity. I like audacious goals. I like, California, Henry was saying it, California is a cause and a movement, but it's also limitless in terms of our capacity to do great things. The world looks to us for that kind of innovation and entrepreneurial spirit. And so I have every expectation we'll meet it. By the way, proof point, on March 23rd, you can look this up. I have their app. It's a weird thing, and this probably disqualifies me for being governor. The idea that I have the Cal ISO app on my iPhone, where every day I look at the portfolio mix of our energy consumption in this state. On March 23rd of this year, Cal ISO hit 56, it's easy to remember, 56.7% of our electricity needs were met with renewables. We already achieved that back in March. Now I know it was a marked a moment in time, but I have all the expectation that California can meet those goals. And I've been a fanatic on zero emission vehicles for years. I was one of those original EV1 owners that tried to have my cousin who's been in and out of the criminal justice system steal the car so GM couldn't take it from me. And then I thought better about being complicit in the crime. But it only showed I was very passionate about EVs, and I know we have some very audacious goals, as I noted, that 1.5 million vehicle goal by Governor Brown. But that's a $3 billion price tag. At least Phil Ting has a bill that doesn't come without a cost in terms of creating incentives so that we could get some price parity on the internal combustion engine. But I do believe, with respect, that India and China will clean our clock if California doesn't lead this nation in adapting to the changing consumer trends and needs and upgrading our technology so that we can compete in a global basis. Yeah, I disagree with that assessment, and I'll take some responsibility because we participate in the task force that made that recommendation. You got a lot of folks out there, black and brown folks, that are stuck in these remedial courses at the CSU with no credit. They get, they get a little frustrated being in these classes, getting no credit, and you're seeing dropout rates, and you're seeing all kinds of related issues that are creating even more disparities down the line. With respect to algebra, we're not saying we're dumbing down or eliminating all math requirements. We're just saying in this particular case, there's other ways of achieving same goals. And so I thought it was a principled thing to do. And, you know, good people can disagree. I don't see it as dumbing down. I thought it was a very pragmatic step and a very appropriate step. I also have been very aggressive. As you know, it's interesting, I just Googled Indeed.com is a great job listing site, probably the most robust in the state. I was just out of curiosity Googling them about the number of job openings in Orange County. It showed over 47,000, at least on my phone. Remember, the filter bubble, everybody will get a different answer by asking the same question. That's a whole deeper topic for another time. But 47,000 job openings in your county today, right now, which says, well, what the hell is that? I mean, you can almost eliminate the unemployment rate here. Be down at 1.5%, 2%. In this country, there's 4.3 million job openings, a little over 9 million people unemployed. So there's a real skills gap. It goes deep to this question, and I'll close, and I know we've got to go. But this is profoundly important. The issue of skills, the issue that animates me on IT, and it goes to your question, is the example of the 68,000 computer science jobs that are open in the state of California that average over $100,000 a year in salary, and we can't convey enough talent out of the UCs and CSUs. We don't even require a computer. You know, in Texas, you can take, it goes directly to your question, you could take computer coding class in lieu of a math class for their equivalent of the A through G requirement. In California, you can't. Less than a quarter of our high school kids even have any coding class opportunities. That's ridiculous. And yet we have 68,000 job openings, 100,000+ today. It's laughable. Again, this goes to a different kind of intentionality on economic and workforce development. And let me just close with this final thing, because this is really important to punctuate. What we need are transformation maps. If I'm somehow lucky enough to be your next governor, I'm going to sit down with every cluster of business in this state, from the energy sector to the real estate sector, and we're going to put together 3 to 5 year transformation maps, not 30 to 50 years. Those days are over. What are your workforce development needs? And begin to align those regional needs with our university system and develop agreements. We can call them tripartite agreements, bringing labor in just so we can move quickly, business and government together, and develop a curriculum to address those gaps. We don't do that. We did that when we developed the master plan a half century ago. Where the hell have we been? And then we can overlay that, and I'll tell you, you want to be audacious? Provide credits, reimbursable credits for every 25-year-old and older, anyone 40 and over, double the credits, and allow those credits to be used at our community colleges, CSUs, and UCs to get nano degrees, to upgrade those skills. This state can afford to do that. I don't think we can afford not to do that. You can't be high wage and high growth without high skills. And we need at a scale and scope that requires all of us in this together. And I don't think any of us are talking in those scale and that scope. We can achieve this. But again, it's just about a different level of intentionality. And it goes to bottleneck courses. It goes to breaking through some of these issues that have been historic as it relates to the African American Latino community, addressing the achievement gap in a meaningful and substantive way. But again, leadership. At the end of the day, all comes down to leadership. Thank you guys very much. I'm very grateful for this opportunity.
The Orange County Forum is brought to you through the generous support of the Orange County Register and our sustaining partners. For more information about the Orange County Forum, call 949-588-9884. The Orange County Forum is a nonprofit organization. Your contributions are tax deductible.